Good morning everyone. It is a really beautiful day. It is chuffing cold though. It was about -3 I think last night, and it's, you know, frost has melted off, but there was a heavy frost. It's about 11 o'clock. Come out to the car because I'm about to start the final prep on that panel before I weld it back on, and I just wanted to remind myself what plug weld holes I needed and the sort of spacing between them. You can see the old spot welds here. The gaps aren't exactly consistent. I think I was explaining that last night. You can see here as well, that gap spacing seems to be consistent for pretty much all of the outer panels on the SD1s. So I'm just going to take some few reference measurements. So that's about 1.75 inches, about 2 inches, about 1.5, so anywhere between 1.5 and 1.75 inches. That one is over 2 inches. That one about, what's that, 1.5 again? So I'm going to go about 1.75 to 1.5 all the way round. I need to put some pre-drilled holes in and around that filler. There's a couple. I think there's one there and then 2 here. Then we've got all the way along there at the same sort of spacing of intervals. And I can't remember what was up here, just looks like random plug weld holes everywhere. So I'll do my best to replicate all of that. I also want to remind myself what I was doing down here and how much repair I have to do. So once that skin's on, it's going to limit my access to this area. Can't remember whether that goes on there first and then the skin goes on, or whether they're both the same. Let's have a look at this side. Okay, it looks like they just join in free air, so that's not a big deal. We can do that. And then up here, excuse me for dodgy camera work, that's the hydrate 80. You can see how it goes off and leaves like quite a hard crust. You can just about scrape it off, but it's quite a nice surface. You can overcoat it. That's protected it from the rain as well because it is actually wet in here. So the Bonder primer and that have both kept the flash rust away. That all looks quite good. I still haven't decided what I'm doing with that flange area yet. I'm debating in my own mind. I think I might end up cutting it out, but that can be done after the wing is on and we've got a bit more strength back in there. Right, so armed with the knowledge that I want gaps of about 1.25 inches to 1.75 inches, I'm going to go and put all the plug weld holes in my new panel. I've made a start marking my holes. Obviously there are some that are already drilled. These are actually fixings for rear mud flaps. Now we have one on this side. I can't remember what that's for. Maybe it's for the wheel arch spat on a Vitesse or something. But yeah, I've just gone around with a marker pen and marked roughly where I want the holes. I've deliberately mixed it up a bit so that it's not all perfectly 1.5 inches, just to make it look a bit more factory and random. When these are dressed, you probably won't see them, but I don't know, I've just done it that way. So you need to do the ones in and around here. I don't know whether I'm going to get my punch tool in there. I might have to drill them by hand. I've also got to put all of them in along that edge, the ones across there, bottom, across the top of there. So still quite a few to do. Got all my holes marked, or at least I think I have. That's the punch tool I'm going to use, but it says somewhere on it or in the instructions, which I actually read this time, don't run it more than 150 psi. Oh, there we are, 90 psi. That is quite a lot higher, and I don't believe my little regulatory thing. So I'm going to just discharge it a bit with an airline thing, coupling. Excuse the noise. Until I know my reservoir's partly depleted, and then I'll get away punching. First test hole. I still haven't kind of worked out what the reach is on this thing yet, or exactly how I'm going to do it, so I'm just going to offer that up and see how it works. Might need a bit more air. Put more air in the compressor, or I've let it put more air in it, so that's better. Oh wow, look, that does look good. Right, okay, so I'm just going to get going and punch in as many as I can reach with this, and then get the drill out to do the other ones. Still can't find my centre punch, so I'm just going to freestyle it. See how much longer it takes with the drill, especially when you haven't got a right size one. That's why I'm shit at drilling and why I love having that punch tool. So they're all now drilled out 7mm, or 6.5 I think it was, can't remember. This part of the skin goes onto the return of that top of that new sill that I put on, but also to a stiffener, I think, and the inner sill. So there's potentially 2mm of steel there for this to go back onto. So same kind of thing, I'm going to drill these holes out bigger so that I can keep the arc on the weld going for longer and get more heat in, so this actually sticks. Because it might look beautiful when you sand it down, but it's no good if it sort of just pings off and doesn't melt in and become fused. So these ones I'll do larger. All the ones along that flange and along that flange, they can all stay quite small. Same with that. Actually no, they're already drilled out bigger anyway because I've broken my little drill bit. This isn't going to get done. That can be done later at, when I get to it, or I can put the holes in the boot floor itself. And the same with these flanges here. I'm going to leave all of that for the moment and work out what to do with those later. That's done, they're drilled out. The next step is the ones that I've gone over with the drill. They've left little burrs on the back side, so all of those need to come out. So I'm going to take the panel outside with the sander and just dress those back. I can't be bothered to record it, so I won't bother. Done. So all I've done is just taken the surfaces off. Now it's time to get the zinc primer out and tosh loads of that on there, particularly on the back side of that seam, the underside of here, that bottom corner, and basically anywhere else where I think it might rust. Just while I think about it, I was talking about sealer being between panels when it's at factory. There you can see a big glob of it. This is why I don't really like it when people dip cars to restore them, because the dipping process takes all of the sealer out of every single panel, which isn't good. That's why, you know, as annoying as it is, it's probably better to just do it by hand, or if you have to, blast it and then make sure that you don't warp the panels. But then again, I'm just a hobbyist, not a car restorer, just an observation. Anyway, carry on. So I have painted the key areas. I've also done well, it's probably a bit OTT. This stuff isn't like super expensive, but it's not cheap either. So I've not bothered doing that bit, because literally nothing ever rusts out on that bit. It's just benign interior skin, and I can get to it easily with dinitrile or cavity wax anyway. So I'm going to let that go off. Bits of it are already drying because it's quite warm in this actual lab room, but I'm going to go and get a cup of tea and wait for that to go off, and then I can take it back out to the car and do all of the final prep required to actually weld it on. Back out at the car, I have taken the wheel off, so I've got a bit more access to the wheel arch. A while ago, when I was last doing this, I had deliberately saved a section of this old post to act as a kind of filler to go on the back that I could weld down onto. I can't find it, and I intended to do something similar up here, so I can't find those pieces, so I'm going to have to make new ones. The idea being that if I was to try and butt weld this and just have the two sort of panels floating in free air and then fill the gap up with weld, I could dress it down and make it look smooth and lovely, but I wouldn't know what was on the back side, and actually I could have like a tiny flange of material here and not really a lot of strength. So by putting a piece of steel in underneath, I could weld down on top, get loads of penetration, loads of heat, linish it smooth, which of course it needs to be because this is a body line and you'll see that. This one's less important because it gets hidden by a big plastic trim panel, so you won't see it. And all the rest of them are plug weld seams. But I have seen a Rover SD1 that was restored, and the guy put a complete quarter on here and here. But I don't know what he did inside, but basically the whole rear of the car moves and it fractures out both sides. So yeah, I know I keep saying belts and braces, but this is actually quite an important part of the car. It adds a lot of stiffness, so it needs to be done right. So I'm going to go find some bits of steel, cut them, bend them, profile them, and then tack them in here and here, so that I can do the final dressing of my outer skin and put it on. Incidentally, I've come out here and gone over the Hydrate 80 in a few areas with the Bonder primer. I'm also thinking a few steps ahead in what needs to be done after this skin is on, and it'll need to be filling in the end of that sill, that bit, and then I'll start rebuilding the bottom of here ready for my new boot floor section that I'm going to have to fabricate. But basically I need the wing in there so that I can build all of this back onto it, because it'll be, you know, kind of going around the car, was it, anti-clockwise. I've made a decision that I won't be chopping out and replacing that whole rear lamp panel because it's actually quite good. I will have to address some rust here. That's all just surface. These are the old tow bar holes. I'm not going to bother chopping all of that out. I'll just do some localized repairs, because again, all of this gets hidden by the rear bumper, and it's not a bodge, it's just, you know, this project's already gone on much longer and much more in depth than I had intended, so I don't want to keep beating myself up about it. I'm just going to get on and get it done. And as if by magic, ta-da! these, well, this one and that one, on my little pieces, which will act as a shelf. I had to, where are we, there, notch this one slightly so that it would go past that reinforcing rib there. So, where are we? This is quite hard to do one-handed whilst holding the camera. Let's get back up here a bit. It does go in, honest. So you get the idea. That forms a shelf. Look at that. I don't even need to tack that one in place. Yeah, that forms a shelf for my new skin to sit on top of. Then I can leave a sort of a 1mm gap all the way through and get a really nice solid weld on there, and then just do the flanges, and I'm happy that's really solid. And then the same deal on this one. I might have to swap hands a bit here. I'm still finding the iPhone a lot easier to use than the GoPro, simply because it's got a viewfinder. You can see what the hell you're doing. GoPro's great if it's on a tripod, but there we go. Again, don't even need to clamp that in there. That's happy as it is. I'll just fine tune the final shape before I actually get welding. So I don't think we're that far away now. I just need to go and get the panel, make sure the Bonder primer is cured or gone off, whatever you want to call it. Then there will need to be some final dressing of particularly those two top bits. Now I've got those little plates in, I can sand back the wing so that I have a nice reliable gap, do the final fit and make sure it's all nicely working with the door and the sill and all the shut lines, all that sort of stuff, and then I can tack it on and then weld it on. I'll also need to go and get some more blankets and things to protect the glass, because I didn't last time and that was a big boo-boo. Right, I've just been doing some rather boring but quite necessary things, like actually sanding all the paint off, and then I put some zinc primer on it. Done this one too. I think earlier I said that I wasn't going to tack these on, but I will, because there's so much clattering about when I offer the other panel up that they're just moving. So I'm going to grab the welder and just tack those in, and then we shouldn't be too far away from doing the actual welding on the proper panel. They're on there, they're just little holding tacks, and I'm going to go and get a grinder down and just nip them back so that they're flush and the other panel will sit on top nicely. I'm actually going to need to get the die grinder in there to really clean up one of them, particularly in there, which you can't see, which is good because it's a mess. It might look like it's perfectly on there, and it ain't far off, but this is where you really have to take the time. You've got a lot of panel gaps coming together here. I haven't even closed that door yet to look at that end. But you can see that body line looks like it's somewhere close. You have some freedom of movement in and around this area, but bearing in mind that has to be aligned there with those through holes and then clamped up. That wants to be all aligned nicely. These SD1s really don't fit very well here. That is always sitting a bit low. That's just the way they are. The key one is that one, because you see that. This is all hidden by the rear light. That is hidden by the badge bar, and then the bumper sits in here. So I'll be remaking that bit anyway, so that doesn't matter. But basically I'll have to get a pair of grips in there, get that the right height, make that gap good. Wheel arch has gone on really nicely. That fits nicely. That's all going to be fine. I just need to get that edge good. That gap's really good for welding. I might need to address something in here, and at the moment the biggest problem is in there, because I've got several layers and they're not sitting down far enough. So I might either need to take some material off the back of here or off of there, but I'll pull that off now and give it a bit of a pokage. I'm going to turn the camera off because it's so cold. This battery's going to die if I don't. Just as another little guide, I've been in with the wired wheel brush thing, and it's quite useful just to check levels and things with a steel edge. Basically that first bit I'm going to be welding I'm really happy with, and over here, right, let's get it right, let's stick it on that frame. There we go. It's pretty damn good as well. So that panel's not actually flat, it curves out this way, which is why my ruler is not looking perfect, but you get the idea. Right, I've made some final adjustments. I say final, I hope they're final ones, because this is taking far too long. But we are getting there, I think, slowly, very slowly. It's not getting dark, but it's a lot later than I planned it being to get to this stage. But this is just the way it is. It takes forever if you want to get this stuff fitting properly. It's easy to just throw a panel on and weld it up, but yeah, if you want to actually take your time about it, it does take time. Okay, it's looking pretty damn good. I haven't actually shut the tailgate or the door yet. Oh, damn it, I'll have that one off to come out for the moment. Boing, boing, boing. That is pretty much perfect. Remember, I can move the door if I absolutely need to, but I don't think I will, because that looks nice. That's the join there, that seam lines up, that's a bit wide, but I don't care, because I could dress that back. None of this, remember, you see at all, none of it. So the only thing you really care about is that. Fuel filler lines up nicely, that flange is good. The wheel arch, that will work. I am slightly alarmed by how far up that return is that I made, but it's all fixable. This is probably the key area, because this you will see, and it's got to be perfect. This is off at the moment, as is that, but I don't care, again, because I can get a really good weld in here first, and then beat the hell out of the rest of it to get it to fit. At the back, that's all good, it's in the right place. This is looking nice, that's all going to work. That again, once that is done, I can bash the hell out of it. Let's get the boot lid down, excuse me. Perfect. You do actually have some flexibility. can you see how that's still moving in and out there? It's not particularly flexible, but if I really needed to, I could actually put a ratchet strap around the whole of the boot, pull that top corner in, and then weld that top seam, and it would be okay. So I'm really happy that that is in the right place. So, ladies and gentlemen, presuming there are ladies that watch this, I can now start tacking that in, take my clamps off, panel beat and shape the last little bits and pieces, and we'll be winning. So that is all very exciting. I'm going to switch the camera off again. All I'm going to do while the camera is off is go around with that wire brush wheel on the drill and get the crap out of the key welds, and I'll do them first, and then I can go around with the scribe and the drill with the welder and do all the rest of it. I'm going to do my first welds with the welder just at tack mode really, and then when I'm happy this is in the right place, I'll crank the welder up a bit more. But you can see what I mean, that's welded really nicely onto the back. I can grind that relatively smooth and I'll know it's nice and strong. Lovely stuff. Onto the other side. I was worried for a minute then, I thought it was a bit wonky donkey, but I think it's okay. I'm going to pull this over slightly while I've got it in a position that I can do that. Well, I would if I could get the clamps in. Yeah, I'm happy with that, so I'm just going to weld it. I'm going to do something that looks a bit drastic. Because I want to get a good weld in there, I'm going to bend that out of the way, and then I'll have to hammer it back straight afterwards. 5mm pliers, which I can't. So now I can get the welder in. And I might dress that bit with the grinder now before I bend that flange up. Oh, I said flange. Don't know whether you. Oh, it's still recording. That's good. So that is a really solid weld, and that's dressed back basically smooth. So now I'm going to hammer this back up. Sorry, this bit up, weld along there, and you know, basically keep going. This bit's important to get right because the stainless steel body lines clip over it, so it has to look, well, it doesn't have to look perfect, it just has to work perfect. Again, sorry if you're getting dizzy. That's fine, and they're the crucial bits. So I'll do that bit first, put a tack in here, then I'll hammer that all back up before I do that plug weld. I can't remember who it was who suggested it, but they said put a piece of copper on the backside of stuff like this, because then you can weld onto it but it doesn't stick to the copper, and this is where that would have been a really useful tip to employ, but I haven't got any copper, so I'm just going to blob it on and then have to sand back through it. I say sand, I can't be bothered to change the sanding disc onto the grinder, so I'm just going to grind it. So that's looking like that now. It's nice and smooth in there. I haven't done the underside yet because I need to beat that, and I might weld it from the underside. Well, I don't know, I'll kind of make it up as I go along really. Does it sound like I know what I'm doing? Sorry, throwing up all over your keyboards. I'm going to go back to doing this one. First of many plug welds to go. Just for good measure, I think I'll do that one. I'll give you a little tour. This is going to get very boring now because it's basically repeating the same process. All the hard stuff's done. Really, this join here and that join up there were the difficult ones. and that's worked lovely. There's a couple of bits where the wind blew my shielding gas away, so once I've ground that a bit smooth I might come back and tart it up a bit. Got one plug weld done there, one there, one there, one there. And when I'm playing with the welder and I'm setting this stuff up, just covering that so hopefully the camera will focus, you can see that the weld has actually penetrated because it's disturbed the back surface of that. So I know that my welder's now set up quite nicely for doing the plug welds, which is good. And hopefully we've got the same thing here. Can't show you on video, but I can feel that it's actually begun to burn through that back panel. So they're really nice and minimal effort required to sand them flat. Then up here, that bit I was working on, the underside is all done. I've done some very, very crude sanding with a cutting disc on end, which of course you should never do because it will blow up in your face and cut your eyeballs out. But I'm lazy like that. So that's all nice and smooth. I haven't even cleaned the backside up, that's just how the weld ended up. I need to grind out that bit of shit in the bottom there, excuse my language. That's all really lovely. That I've already lineaged smooth again with the cutting disc on end, which you shouldn't do. And that will work. I can make up all that gap that I need to. Just need to bend it down in place. Happy with the gaps. As I said, it's chuffing cold. I'm getting really cold, so I'm going to switch this off at the moment, go and get a cup of tea, come back out and just blitz through it. I'm not going to bother recording it because you know the process and it's just going to make for a really long and boring video otherwise. So I'm off for a cup of tea. Bye bye. Probably about maybe a third of the way through. I've done the tops, that flange there. I've been working my way down here. I also had it tacked in that bottom corner as well, just for good measure. And all the clamps are still in around the back, so that hasn't moved. I'm just showing you stuff like this because this is like a warts and all type of resto. Like, I'm not a pro or anything. These ones, it's my pet hate on SD1s when they get restored is people do stuff like they fill in that body line there, like they weld all of that over, or they weld in along that seam and it just looks crap. From factory they should look like, all this gets hidden anyway. I think you see that bit when the door's open, but otherwise you don't see it. But it should end in a nice crisp line along there and across here. And then these are just spot welded. Annoyingly, and this is what I wanted to show you, if you make your hole, or if I make my plug weld hole too close to the edge, because that sill is quite thick metal, you need so much heat to get it to weld through onto it that you just end up burning out the lip there, and that's what I've done here. So I've had to tack it onto the sill, and then I'll have to very, very delicately later grind that out and sand it and make it look nice. It's going pretty okay in here. This is all working lovely. I deliberately left that flange long so I could get lots of nice heat in and then cut it off afterwards. So that's all looking good. I've been progressively clamping and hammering this flange together as I went along. That's all looking really good actually. Quite often you see these and it hasn't been pushed down enough and it doesn't sit right, so that's good. That's all good. And yeah, still making progress, but it is slow, and it's not exactly sunset, but it's about 3 o'clock and it gets dark about 3:30, 4 o'clock, so I've got to get a wriggle on. In terms of the gap that way, I'm happy. You can, well, you can't really tell what's going on up there because of the different colours, but basically when you put a straight edge across it, it's nice. Looks okay down here. It's not sitting in the right place because I haven't got a boot seal in there or a latch, but that looks good. If anything, this boot wants to come back a bit, but I can kind of, or the body shop can kind of trick that with filler, or I can adjust the boot and move the whole, I call it a boot, a tailgate, that could actually all come forward. That would close this gap up as well, particularly at the top. Tailgates on Series 2 SD1s just don't fit, and that might sound like an excuse, but they don't. They're always long here, which is what we've got. So yeah, it's on there, and overall I'm pretty happy with the fit. We are now most of the way there, all the way, oh sorry, all the way from there, all the way along down to there is done. There's a few tacks in and around here. This is my last opportunity to get the line right on that rear wing. It doesn't look right at the moment because the boot is still open because I've got a clamp in there. I can't close it fully. Ugh. But it's pretty damn good. So I'm going to tack it there, then I can take the clamp out, check it again before I make my final decision whether or not to weld it. It's now 3:15. I think I started on this about 11 o'clock this morning. I haven't actually stopped other than for a cup of tea. So I'm cold and getting bored now. It stopped being fun and now it's just a grind. Pun not intended. That's all done, that's all welded in. I did it from both sides, so that's perfect strong. Those are all done. From memory, there might actually have been another row in here where it comes down and touches this panel. I'll have to go back and read my videos or watch my videos. If there is, it's no big deal. I can just put a couple of holes through here and weld down. Those are done. There's enough metal for that to actually be strong, so the only bit I need to cut out and repair is that flange, which is good because that makes it simpler. What I might do is just cut a big slot, chop all of that out, post a piece of steel up through the middle and then weld it along the underside, and then that'll give me my flange and it will make it all strong and lovely. Down here I haven't welded this to that or that to that or anything yet. All I've done is put a seam down there and a couple of tacks in and around those bolt holes because I forgot to drill the plug weld holes in here. It's not a big deal because this will come over and cover all of that, and that seam there is going to be considerably stronger than 3 tacks through plug weld holes there, and these are just to hold it on for the moment. When I come to fit the bumper, they'll probably be ground out anyway, so they can go away. The last bit now is the laborious, boring, upside down weldy bit on all of these plug welds. The ones in the sides are easy. As we go up under here, I'm going to have to clamp the 2 panels together. They're starting to fit really nicely. It's a bit gappy here. Don't know whether you can see. Ignore the fact that this flange is sticking miles out. I always knew that, and that was deliberate because I didn't know exactly how to shape that template piece. So I put it in oversized, knowing that when it's welded on, I can just go around with the grinder, chop it off nicely. So yeah, that's where we're up to really. I'm gonna go use up the last bit of the battery on the GoPro and try and film some of this. We are so close to being done with the welding. I say we, I mean I. All of that is in and done and it looks spot on, so I'm extremely smug. I will make a small strip to go over that bit. That just gets seam sealed, but I will make sure that's closed off. All of it needs tidying up, but it's getting dark. It might not look it, but this camera's really good at compensating for that. I just need to clamp this up, do those in there, and then I will probably put a tiny bit of zinc on these just to stop them flash rusting. I hope I'm out here again tomorrow, but I don't 100% know yet, and I don't want all that hard work to start becoming compromised by frost and flash rust and stuff like that. So I'm going to do those next and then probably clean it up, pack up, go home. Done. That, I think, is every single weld that needs to be done on this here rear panel. Obviously there's a lot of grinding to do, but I'm knackered. No, I can't be bothered to do it tonight. I say night, it's still basically daylight, but it's cold, and for the last maybe 45 minutes, an hour, I've been sat on that floor and it's frozen my butt. So that is the end of the video. I'm gonna do the boring bit of tidying up now, and then probably spend about an hour and a half editing the video and putting it on YouTube for all of you to enjoy. So until next time, good night.